Let me ask you this. What is love? What is real love when you're in a marriage? And how should you feel when you're married and in love? Is there still this incredible spark, butterflies, this excitement, this passion? Is that what's supposed to be there when you're married and in love? Are you supposed to enjoy spending lots of time together? Well, my friend Thomas is here to debunk all this stuff about love. I'm going to ask him to join. Let's see here. You may have to request to join. Oh, there you go. Perfect. This incredible coach who has this really unique approach to helping couples cultivate this long, intimate, loving relationship. So hi, Thomas. How are you?
I'm good. It's good to see you today.
Yes, you too. Well, I was just sharing how you have this incredibly unique approach to really helping couples really get to this place where they can restore trust and how they can really build this loving relationship. So I love this unique twist that you have to couples therapy. So Thomas, we're going to talk about a bunch of things today. We're going to talk about the truth about love and repairing attachments. Does that sound good?
Sounds great. Let's get started.
Awesome. So let's just start with some foundational stuff. So how is love really perceived in today's society? Let's jump into that.
You know, that's a really good question because I think our whole perception of love is so skewed, which is part of why we get it wrong. So we've been sold this idea of chemistry and that we have to have this intense feeling when we first meet someone, which is what we then tend to seek. And then we based our decision of our long-term partner choice based on this chemistry or intensity of emotion that we feel in that moment. However, this emotional charge that we experience, which is also called a hormone, primarily dopamine, and what that is something that tells us whether to pull away from something or go towards something. However, trusting this blindly is a big issue because it says nothing about compatibility. It says nothing about the things that keeps us together over a lifetime, such as, you know, compatible attachment styles, such as shared long-term goals, etc., etc. And again, while this is probably too long for today's live, part of what I teach people is an integrated process called integration, which basically teach people how to make good decisions. And that's when all three layers of the brain align, meaning our cognition and logic, which is things such as, do we have matching attachment styles? Do we have same long-term goals, etc.? That's the logical part, right? Then there's the emotional part. How do I feel when I'm around this person? And then there's the last part, which is the somatic, the sensation. How does my body respond to this person? Do I feel drained? Do I feel energized? Do I feel tense? Do I feel relaxed around them? And we make good decisions when all these three systems are aligned. But I think part of the issue, like I said, with love is that we learned it's about this intensity and it's about feeling intense really quickly, while it's not. Love is more, if you imagine a flower, we plant the seed, right? First, we have to pick a good soil, right? If we don't have a good soil, the flower or the tree isn't going to flourish. Then we have to nurture it, meaning we have to consistently go and water it, right? If we don't do that consistently, it's not going to bloom. And it slowly blooms and slowly opening, right? It's not fast, it's not intense, it's consistent. And that brings us back to what is love actually? What is love then if it's not this intense emotion, right? And love consists of, I say, three key elements. The most important, we rarely associate with love at all, which is actually safety. Safety is a foundation. That's picking the right soil to plant that tree or that flower. But what is safety? It's a word, but how do we get it? Well, let's go back and look at how a child feels safe initially when it's born, right? The reason it feels safe with its mother or its father, for that matter, any caregiver who's responsible, is through that caregiver attuning to the child, trying to figure out what does the child need when it's crying. Does it need food? Does it need a hug? Does it need a blanket? What's going on? And then they try to respond. And every time they get it wrong, they reattune, right? And they repair until they get it right. That's a foundation for safety. It's someone who tries to attune to what you need, what your boundaries are, show curiosity around that, and respond to it, right? By respecting your boundaries, by listening to what it is that you need to feel safe in this dynamic. So when that shows up consistently, we start feeling safe. And that's when we can start building on top of that. Again, that's when we can go into the second element, which is vulnerability. But I think there's often a huge misunderstanding what vulnerability is. And I see this typical when I work with clients who are out dating again, is that people mistake emotional dumping and vulnerability, because they can look very similar, because both of them are somebody sharing something intimate about themselves or something that feels intimate. But there's a key distinction, because emotional dumping is somebody who can't hold their own distress. So they try to offload it onto you for you to hold it on for them. While vulnerability is where I can hold my distress myself, but I slowly disclose this to you as a trusted person in my life. The difference is also emotional dumping happens very fast. It's somebody telling you straight away, oh, all these horrible things happened to me in my childhood, and oh, everybody's so horrible to me. When you just met them a couple of times, that's emotional dumping, right? While vulnerability is a slow disclosure based on trust that's built over time, right? So it doesn't come very quick and fast. And that's also one of the key ways to distinguish between something that might be toxic and something that might be really healthy and nurturing for you. And the last element of mature love then is also acceptance. And again, we can go back to this analogy of the parent. As a parent, we create that safety through attunement and responsiveness and being consistent, right, in that. And then we also accept our children and allow them to flourish in however way they need to flourish, right? And when we have these elements, the child feel loved. Well, guess what? As adults, we are exactly the same.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that was incredible. I feel like I'm going to have to go back and watch this live multiple times to pick up on all that. I took a few notes here, and the first thing that came to mind is, like, I work with women who are already married, and I think back to my own marriage. I met my husband when I was 17, and he was very good looking. We had a very, like, strong connection. We both like sports, so we had some similar goals in mind, but it was definitely more this emotional attachment. So what do you do now? Like, now that couples are married, maybe they didn't marry based on this vulnerability and the somatic experience and the combination of goals and emotional and how they felt. How do you repair that now? How do you get to that place? Because you didn't necessarily pick your partner based on that stuff. We didn't, like you said, we didn't have that mature love when we first met. Because I don't think kids are taught this. They're taught, like, he's very good looking or she's very good looking. I'm interested, right?
Of course.
Usually it's a very physical appearance that gets you started in this process.
Of course. And it's also, you know, that's how we are primed. We are basically primed as an animal to have seeker avoidance behavior. That's what dopamine does, right? So exactly like you said, when we feel that reward hormone, we tend to gravitate. And one of the reasons, and I'll answer your question in a second, but one of the reasons I really warn and keep telling people about slowness is that dopamine is something that's very, very easy to trigger. So I work with a lot of people who've been in abusive relationships, and the main reason that they got triggered into this was that very toxic people tend to be excellent at spiking dopamine. They do that with something called love bombing. And because people only follow their emotions, they don't see the warning signs, right? Because they rush. So that's why I emphasize that point. But back to your question, which is about what do we do if, you know, we made a choice and it might be a really nice partner, but something has gone wrong. Because also we have a wonderful partner, yet it goes wrong. And very often what happens is that people come, and I work with people as well, you know, who's in that position. They're married and they don't really understand why things have just gone off rail. And often what happens, this is often not something to do with an attachment dance that has happened where people are not aware of their own attachment and their partner's attachments and how these link together. And I'll go into that in a moment, why that's really important. And the second part is that often there's something called key attachment moments where, as I told you about the safety before, attunement responsiveness, the partner didn't respond. And that creates an underlying attachment wound that continues to impact the relationship negatively. Even if the day-to-day seems okay, it will continue to cause conflict. And these key attachment moments can be anything where you're in a state of distress. It could be you just lost your job. It could be you lost a parent. It could be whatever it might be that caused you a lot of distress. And you need your partner to respond and help you regulate and calm, and they don't respond. And even if there's a good, valid reason, this system in our brain is black and white, meaning if our attachment partner does not respond, there's an attachment wound that happened. And until we look at that wound, it gets acknowledged, and those more vulnerable emotions that maybe weren't expressed at that time get expressed and acknowledged and seen, then that will continue to underlying cause conflicts. So often, even in divorce, this is so impactful, because I spoke to, you know, people that were in divorce and they had their lawyers and wasting all this money. And I said to all the problems you have are not logical. I know you think it's about money. I know you think it's about X, Y, and Z. It's not. As soon as we remove the resentment, logic comes back online and it becomes super easy to solve the logical problems. And I've seen this while working with people, that once that resentment is solved and the key attachment wounds are healed, then they can go through their divorce pretty much without much issue at all.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, you know, what happened is this attachment dance have gone wrong, which is why they don't feel the love anymore. And once they can do that, they can much easier then come back to respond to each other's needs. One of the classical ones is the avoidant and the anxiously attached. And the anxious one often fear abandonment. So they tend to latch on, right? They tend to need a lot of reassurance. They tend to use maybe more controlling and blaming behavior, which makes sense if you understand the fact that they have a good reason for why they have a fear of abandonment. The avoidant have learned that nobody will respond to them because their parents didn't respond, so they don't trust others. And that's why they don't really like intimacy. They don't really like this, and they prefer to soothe on themselves, right? That's what they learned. So when the anxious come and need this reassurance, they feel, again, overwhelmed, and the avoidant pull away. That makes the anxious feel more anxious, and the avoidant pull more away. And they get into a toxic cycle where they actually reinforce each other's attachment wounds and make each other more and more dysregulated, right? Even if they're two wonderful human beings. And to be able to step out of this dance, they need to be aware of their attachment patterns, the behaviors they have, so they can suddenly see, oh, we're stepping into this dance again where you're chasing and I'm withdrawing, and you're chasing and I'm withdrawing. Maybe we can stop for a moment and choose something different. We can put on a different tune, a different song where we're not stepping each other on each other's feet all the time, right? And they can instead say, what is it actually you need in this moment? And the one often that has anxious attachments, if they can learn to replace the blame with I statements, so that could be instead of, oh, you don't do this, or you were never there, blah, blah, you always go out with your friend, which will cause a defensive response and cause the avoidant to pull away more and do more of those things, right? If instead the anxious could use I statements, where they, for example, say, I feel really alone when you don't check in with, and you spend all this time, and I really love you, I want more time with you. What I really need is I need to show that you also care. And I see that when you put in effort and organize a date. So it would be lovely if you could organize a date once a week. Can you see how that's very different? And that doesn't trigger a defensive response. It doesn't trigger adrenaline because it's focused on how I feel, how I need. So by working with both couples, you can change this dance and basically create a new piece of music that they can dance in alignment to.
Yeah, what if your partner, like your husband, isn't, or your wife, isn't receptive to those I statements? They just say things like, oh, when are you going to get over this? Stop asking me. You ask me this every day. You constantly want more attention. How do you go about this with one partner's just not there to support you? But on the flip side, maybe there's some inner work that needs to be done. Like you need to support yourself, or you need to love yourself more. So sometimes I wonder if some of that attachment, you need to do some work with yourself so you're not needing so much validation from your partner. You're not needing that reassurance,
Yes.
or that I love you, or you're okay, or I'll do better, or that's not happening anymore. Yeah, what are your thoughts?
So I think, yeah, it's a really good, I think, question also to put out there. And I think, so there's two aspects to this, and I don't think one or the other is right. I think you need both. So the reason I talk a lot about social healing in a context of two people is because that's ideal. However, you're right, that's not always going to happen. But the fact is that our wounds are created socially, and they are also healed best socially, because we are social beings and our brain responds to social cues. That's just how we are wired, and we know that scientifically. And I think we should do work, so I will get back to that in a second. The reason I don't talk as much about that is because we live in a culture that talks so much about self-love that we have almost disacknowledged the fact that we are social beings, and that actually there is a social element to healing. So I want to bring that back into the equation, but I don't think it's one or the other. I think you're right. Of course, there's also work to do ourselves, and I also work with people individually. And a lot of men, actually, especially because I know for a lot of men, they don't really want to engage with this process. They can have a lot of resistance to the idea of therapy because men are taught, you know, we know everything. So the idea of admitting that actually we have no clue what we're doing in relationship, because most people don't, right? We're just winging it. And there can be huge value in, yes, like you said, of course, there's an element of self-love. And you can also get some of this attachment healing through working with a therapist or a coach, because they can give you this attunement I talked about before and responsiveness, so your nervous system get a sense of secure attachment, and that can make you start feeling more calm in yourself. So maybe your partner can't give it to you, but somebody you work with externally can start giving you that safe frame of reference, right? So that can also happen, because to give yourself self-love, and this is an important point, you have to have had a reference of what love is. I worked with abused people before, and telling them to do self-love is completely useless for them, because their idea of what love is somebody hitting you, right? So therefore they need first to have an experience of what is it actually when somebody consistently is safe and responsive to you. And obviously that's what I give them, so they can get a sense, and then they can start giving it to themselves. And we need to do work in a way, we need to understand our own habits and responses. So as you said, if the partner don't want to engage, we can still hugely benefit from understanding what are my responses, what are my triggers, and how do I respond in these circumstances? Why do I respond? And how might I slow down, right? Because what I can teach myself through therapy or coaching is I can teach myself when these triggers come up, how do I regulate? How do I calm down my body so I don't have to respond to this trigger in the same way I did when I was 2 years old? Even though that response might have worked really well as a 2-year-old, it might not work so well anymore as a 40-year-old.
Yeah, I love that combination of going inward plus the social healing. You need both. You can't just do it in isolation on your own. Which one comes first? Do you start with yourself and then like kind of explore your own triggers, your own, how you're not meeting your own needs, and then you go outward? Or like, how do you start that process if you're doing
I
it
think
on your,
they
if you're
run.
kind of doing it on your own, your partner's really not active in this process of wanting to work on the relationship, you're kind of on your own?
So I think they run a line together at the same time, meaning I don't think it's one or the other, because the fact is, working with somebody, like I said, can give you that secure attachment, but it can also help you reflect on things you might not even be aware of, right? So, you know, they have the, you know, the learning model. I have 4 stages, and one of them is where we are unaware of our own incompetence. Then we become aware of our incompetence, right? You know, there's these 4 steps. And if you're at the stage where you're unaware of the things you don't know, then it's hard to change. We have to first become aware of what we don't know. And that's where working with someone can be really helpful, who can make you start seeing what are these triggers in the first place? What are these patterns? Because some people don't even know that they are living through patterns. It's called reenactment. So what we tend to do, if we had an experience in childhood that were highly disturbing for us or distressful, and it doesn't have to be what we see as a trauma as an adult, because even small things can be traumatic to a child, because they don't have a regulatory nervous system where they can regulate themselves. So what we then do is we normally tend to reenact, to try and recreate the same scenario in unconscious hope of resolving that conflict, right? So sometimes we don't even know that we are recreating the same things again and again, whether it's with multiple partners or one partner. So that's where working with someone can be really good, to even bring our awareness to things we are not even aware of. And then we can start doing our own work using our new awareness, right?
Yeah, I think that's really powerful. Like you said, it's hard to see inside yourself sometimes. It's nice to have someone guide you on that process, whether it's a therapist or a coach, to really give you that outside perspective. Because it's amazing, even with myself, I pick up on so many words, like little words, like when someone says should, or they say just, or they say but, or just the tone they use. It's amazing how, like, from an outside perspective, we can pick up on things that they don't even realize, because they're just patterns. Like, we have so many thoughts a day, but we're not really conscious of a lot of them, and we're kind of have this autopilot going that's just kind of driving our day. So it's amazing how we can start to break those patterns, and like you said, get that awareness, that consciousness. It doesn't change things right away, but to have that awareness, then you can really start to make the change. Where was I going to go with my next question? Real love. I think that was how we started. Like, what is real love is where we first were at. So now you're in a relationship, things are going really south, you're feeling like you need to go to divorce. What would you suggest here? Like, you're heading for divorce. What's one of the first things you would really, really do? If you can't access a coach or you can't access a therapist, what would one of the first tips you could do for yourself or together?
So the first thing I want to distinguish, there's 2 different scenarios here. So there's abusive relationships, where I would say go seek imminent help. So the category I'll be talking about today is non-abusive relationships. I just want to make that distinction before I give my advice, yeah, because I think that's important. So I'm only talking about non-abusive relationships here. And in that instance, so you say if somebody don't have the resources to actually go work with someone and their partner is not engaging, I think number 1 to do is to slow down. Because what we tend to do in highly emotional states is to make quick decisions. And we always make bad decisions when in what's called high arousal, meaning when we're in a high emotional state, whether it's very angry, whatever it is that's going on. We never make good decisions because the part of the brain that account for logic and the part that makes us a more intelligent animal is offline when we are in this high intensity state. So the first thing I would say, don't make good decisions. Go get a journal and start writing down a reflection of what's happening for you, and write down the 3 different levels. We talked about good decision making in the beginning. What thoughts are coming up for you daily? What emotions are you experiencing, and what's happening in your body? Yeah. And that can help you start identify as well. Because what people often, when they're in this place, they have even forgotten, what is it that I need? What is it that I need? And this will start, you can start tracking when you're around different people in different circumstances. How are you thinking differently? How are you feeling differently? How is your body responding differently? And that will start telling you something about what is it I need. Also, you can start reflecting on, what is my emotions telling me? Because we tend to have this idea, we think there's good, there's bad emotions. There are no good and bad emotions. Because if we go back to think about sensations, when we are hot or cold, we don't call that good or bad. It's just, it tells us whether we need to put more clothes on or less. If we are hungry or not hungry, we don't call that good or bad. It's just, I should eat or I shouldn't eat more. But somehow we started labeling emotions, and that's a shame, because emotions is actually just another biofeedback system, like the hot or cold, or hungry, not hungry. It's telling you that something is going on in the organism that needs attention. So therefore, what they could start doing is reflecting in this journal. If I really feel resentful, if I feel angry, instead of suppressing that, because anger and resentment is not bad, they become harmful when we don't listen to them. Then they become chronic stress, which can cause a lot of harm. But actually, if we stop and pay attention and listen and notice and acknowledge, I feel really angry, or I feel really resentful. And then we can start journal and figure out, why am I so resentful? And we can discover some wonderful things about ourselves that this resentment is telling us. It could be there's needs that you have not expressed for a long, long time. That's great. You can now become aware of what are those needs that I need to express. It could be you had let your boundaries be violated. Anger is a natural, healthy response to boundaries being overstepped consistently. So if you feel a lot of anger, maybe reflect in your journal and say, why do I feel this anger? What is it telling me? Maybe it's because I'm allowing this, I'm doing too much for too many people. I'm not getting enough. That's great. That tells you something about boundaries you need to set. So that's what I think people should start doing if they can't afford a coach or therapist and they don't have a partner that wants to engage, because this will be useful for them whether they stay in this relationship or go on to another one.
Yeah, it's something that needs to be taken care of. If not, those maybe even wounds or inner child stuff will follow you into your next relationship. Let's talk a little bit about, I think it's really fascinating how we replay some things from our childhood that didn't quite meet our needs. We replay that a lot of times in our romantic relationships. Like some people would call that daddy issues. Let's just chat a little bit about that and how we carry that into adulthood and how it really shows up in romantic relationships.
Of course. So I think reenactment is normally the terms used. And the way that this normally plays out is it's more with highly distressed circumstances that we had, that we tend to replay out again because we want a resolution. So it could be somebody who had an alcoholic dad. Or it could be somebody who had a dad who never responded, right? And now this person keeps seeking out and dating men that are highly avoidant and don't respond. And she try to change these men in the hope that she can get a resolution to what she never got from her dad, right? Mm-hmm. So she's hoping that by change, and of course you keep being frustrated because she can't, right? So it's an endeavor that's deemed to fail every single time. And this is where people are stuck again in these attachment patterns of reenactment, because she will tend to gravitate and be attracted to avoidant people that are similar to how her dad acted. I'm just giving an example here. And then she will try to change him, or try to, in the hope to resolve what she wished she could have got from her dad, that suddenly the unavailable person will somehow suddenly become available, and then she can get a resolution to this that she never got, right? But like I said, they're deemed to fail every single time. So instead, this is where people need to go back and work with themselves. And this is where you're right, doing work with you is absolutely critical. And sometimes the partner won't participate in this, and sometimes they're not even useful in that if they're not able to support. And that's something you need to do with a proper professional, because they can look at these reenactments with you and they can help you get a resolution so you don't have to replay the same old movie again and again and again that always end. Because basically reenactment is playing the same movie over and over again and just putting new characters in every time and wondering, why do I keep ending up with this sad ending at the end, right? And then you press rewind and play, but you put new characters in. So we need to get and actually rewrite the whole script. And to do that, sometimes you need to work with a professional.
Yeah, it's powerful. So is that all our subconscious mind? Like that's something within us that just feels this lack, or just feels like this longing for that connection? Is that why? Because it's done very much not consciously. You're not like, I'm seeking out someone that's just like my dad so I can try and heal my past and actually feel loved by a man. Is like, tell me a little bit about that.
Well, so the majority of our behavior is what we call unconscious or implicit memory, whichever term you use. So, and that's primarily what drives our behavior. And I think this is also why it's important to understand how we even process a world which we're not even aware of. We tend to react to what we become consciously aware of, right? But we are often not aware of the fact that before this came to our awareness, and we maybe make some kind of meaning out of what happened. Somebody might say something and we say, oh, you're an asshole. We react with anger, right? What we don't know is what they did went through a processing system, like you said, of all these old emotional memories. And normally when something happens, we only have a small piece of the story. Tons of the full pieces to make meaning out of what just happened are not there. So therefore, for our brain to make meaning out of what happens all the time, which has to happen really fast, it fills in all these gaps. We don't stop at every interaction and ask 1,000 questions to make sure we got the right context, right? Then we would never get anywhere. So what the brain does, it fills out all these gaps, but it can only fill out these gaps with your old emotional memories, meaning what comes to your conscious awareness is pretty much, or it always is, clouded with old implicit emotional memories from your past. So you never see exactly what's happening. You see it clouded with the interpretation and meaning of your own past, which is why some people will get really triggered by an event, and to another person, I might just look at it and it has no impact on me, right? So it's important every time we have enhanced emotional reactions to anything, except if it's abuse. But again, I'm not talking about that today. So if it's a normal event, it could be somebody slamming the door when they leave. And maybe you get really angry and you run after them and you say, how dare you do that, you X, Y, and Z. Then you have to stop for a moment. Why did I have such a strong reaction to somebody slamming the door, right? And you can then start discovering, okay, there's probably a wound there since I have such a strong, okay, what used to happen? Maybe somebody I cared about, they would get whatever drunk and would slam the door. And therefore I'm having this strong reaction every time that occurs.
Yeah, this has been fascinating, Thomas. I love everything you've shared with us. The science behind things, like you combining, I love the science and the emotions and just how it feels in your body. So it's such a powerful technique that you're using. All right, is there anything else you want to add before we wrap this live up?
I think not, besides the fact that if anything, people need to slow down, because one of the biggest things that leads to issues is that we rush, even where we're triggered. Imagine we didn't respond in that moment. We went instead to write down, or we went for a run, and we just slowed everything down. Then we would start being able to make much wiser decisions and avoid much more conflict.
Yeah, I think that's really powerful, because then you can listen to yourself. You can, whether you want to call it your intuition or just those little spidey senses, you can slow down and try and figure out, what is it that I want? What is it that I need? So I think that's really powerful. All right, Thomas, how can people find you?
So they can obviously go to the website Sensensa, and I guess they can also find me on Instagram under the same name, ZENSENSA. You can probably put it in there. And yeah, if they want to know more, there's tons of articles on the website, etc.
Amazing. And if any of your followers need to find me, Instagram's great, or I have this great little guide, 3 Proven Ways to Save a Marriage. It's at www.freemarriageguide.com, or it's in my bio. So Thomas, this has been so much fun. We must do this again. And I guess, yeah, anything else you want to add?
No, that's it. Thank you. It's been fun.
Yeah, it's been fun. We'll talk soon.
Take care.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.